Good morning to the Ashbourne Business Network. Today is my 10-minute presentation and I'm going to take you inside the door of Ashbourne Auto Clinic. The Ashbourne Auto Clinic is now in operation for just over 11 years and this is the old premises. I'll show you the new premises, but we want to try and get in and have a look and see, when you leave keys with me, what actually happens to your car. Do I just give you an invoice at the end and do nothing? We'll see. This is a headlight focuser. We use this to focus the headlights on all of the vehicles here. So this will adjust the headlamp either up or down depending on how out of focus it is. So you can see there down around the 2% mark is in or around where you do it. If you do nothing else in either of those tests before you bring the vehicle to get it tested, get the headlights done, because it's a very, very simple process to get that adjusted. This morning I want to emphasize the fact that we do a Pre NCT and a Pre CVRT, it's called. That's the old DOE. I want to basically show you some of the process that we do for this test. We're going to show you a Mercedes here that I have. We're going to go through some of the basics on that, and then the Transit that's behind me here, we're going to go through some of the basics on that. So the customer's left their keys off with me, and now we're going to go through the process of what we would do normally for that test. If there's a problem with the car, what we're going to do then is we'll price up the job, we'll ring the customer, and then it's up to them to give the okay as to whether they want that work done or not. We've already showed you how we do the headlight focus. So we'll check horn, we'll check lights, we'll check the bodywork of the car. Visually, we'll check the car outside. Then we'll check the car on the interior, so where the driver is sitting. We'll check his brake pedal rubbers, his seatbelt is working. We'll check to see if there's any computer diagnostic lights like airbag or engine management light on. And then we'll raise up the vehicle and we'll have a look underneath. So under the bonnet we have a look at different things, in particular the oil level. So we'll check the oil level here. If the oil level is anyway over full, they will not test the vehicle. So we need to make sure that that level is correct. And you can see there that it is just at the maximum, which is absolutely perfect. And the test will be able to proceed. Other than that, we just visually check our screen wash level, our coolant level, our brake fluid level. We also check the brake fluid to see what moisture content it has in it. We have a little gadget to check that. We also check it for dirt and other impurities, because they will actually fail it on that. That's our power steering pump. Again, we check the fluid level there, which is quite easily seen. And while we're here, we'll check the wiper blades to see if they're broken or ripped or anything like that. They're absolutely perfect. Washer jets here, make sure they're spraying correctly. That's our air filter. Our fuel filter is in behind here. And we basically visually check to make sure nothing's loose, our fan belt is okay, and everything else is okay here. So we'll move on. Okay, we're underneath the vehicle now. This is the Transit that we were on earlier on. And what I want to try and show you here is what we're looking for defect-wise for the CVRT, as they call it now. So we're looking here at various different things. This is the differential. These are the prop shafts. That's the drive shaft. These are the shock absorbers, and these are the leaf springs. And we're going to check them, just check bushings inside them, visually check to see if the shock is leaking or not, visually check here for leaks, check this shaft for any free play in it. This is called a brake equalizer valve. The brake equalizer valve, well, this one is actually seized, so we're going to have to try and free that out. That should move up and down very, very easily. Behind that, I don't know if you can get that shot, we have the spare tire. You can see the spare tire is not in great nick in this vehicle. So again, we're going to have to look at that. Above here, we have what's called a bump stop. They need to be in good condition. And again, we can see it is actually in good condition on this one. What we'll do after this then is we'll jack up the back of the vehicle. We'll actually physically check to see if there's a brake imbalance and a handbrake imbalance. So we'll do that probably on the Mercedes that's beside me here, because it's a little bit easier to show it rather than doing it underneath here. So as we go along the vehicle, you can see the exhaust here, and we'll follow that all the way up to the top. There's little bits of corrosion on it. Not really something to worry about. Once there's no physical holes in it, it's going to be absolutely fine. We check the rubber holes, the rubber grommets there that are designed to keep that exhaust up. Just give it a little bash, if you like, just to see if there's any movement in it or any unusual noises in it. Again, keep checking this drive shaft, which goes into the gearbox. Fuel tank, make sure it's good and dry, make sure there's no leaks. And then we come up as far as the engine. The underneath of this engine, as you can see, is bone dry, which is what we want to see. We don't want to see leaks there. We don't want to see any residue at all. Then we go on to the front suspension. And again, I'm going to show the front suspension on the Mercedes more so than this, because it's easier to see it just with the ramp that we have. So that's basically what we would check underneath the vehicle visually to make sure that everything is sound and good for either test. Okay, now we're down to the nitty gritty here with the old wheels and things like that. The first thing I want to do here is I want to make sure that the wheel bearing here is okay. So I'll physically turn it and make sure that there's no whirring noise or anything like that. The noise you can hear there in the background is literally just the dust cover just making noise behind it. Then I'm going to check it for play, up and down. Up and down checks the wheel bearing again to see if there's any play in that. Then I'm going to check for play sideways. Sideways will tell me if there's any steering problems with what's called the inner or outer track rod or with the steering rack itself. And again, I've nothing there at all. We're then going to have a look at the brake pads themselves in here, and we're going to have a look at the brake disc as well. So we want to make sure that there's no excessive wear on the brake disc, or that the brake pads aren't down to beyond their limits. We're also going to have a look at the tire. We're going to have a look at the valve. Okay, we want to make sure that there's no cracks or anything in that. We want to make sure there's no bulges or anything in the tire. You can see some hairline cracks in the tire here. You know, they're just from hitting curbs and things like that, but there's actually nothing wrong with that tire. It's absolutely fine. Now, the NCT will fail a tire for the age of the tire, but again, it's not an important thing. It's an advisory fail. It's not essentially a fail where you have to get a new tire. We'll have a look on this tire to see what the date is, but the date is actually on the inside of the tire. So I'll get you that just to show you how you can tell what the date of the tire that you have on your car when it's been manufactured. So this is the manufacture date of this particular tire that I was talking about earlier on. So it's the 16th week of 09. So if you went for the test, that is now over 6 years old, and you will get a fail advisory on that particular tire. Again, it's fail advisory. They advise you to change it because it's 6 years old. In fairness, we've never come across a tire that is blown out because it's over 6 years old, but you know, you can end up having a tire in storage or whatever else for a long time, and that's why they will advise to change it, just in case that some sort of a defect has come upon it. Again, these are rubber, natural rubber, so they do degrade. We're now underneath the Mercedes, and for ease, I want to show some little things here. So this is the brake pipe flexible hose. Again, we're looking at this for any defects. Is there any cracks in the hose, or is there any bulges in the hose? And we can't see anything there. For the suspension itself, we can see a little bit clearer on this rather than looking on the Transit. This is an anti-roll bar link. We want to check that for any excessive movement, or if there's any any damage done to that particular component. These are the springs. We want to make sure that they aren't broken. Okay, there's a bit of corrosion on them. Again, it's just age, but they are actually structurally fine. Again, we're going to look at the differential and the drive shaft, the exhaust on this. We've already mentioned it on the other one. As we come up towards the front of this car here, we're going to check things like, I already checked the track rods, the inner and outer track rods. This is your steering rack, and these are what are called the steering boots. Okay, so they keep dirt and bits and pieces like that out of the steering rack, and the reason you need those is that steering rack is moving in and out as you're turning, and again, you don't want dirt and debris going into the steering rack and damaging it. This is an anti-roll bar link, okay, or anti-roll bar. This is the anti-roll bar link. Again, we're just checking for anything on that could be defective. The purpose of the anti-roll bar is to give you stability when you're physically driving the car itself. Just a little point there while we're here. That's our oxygen sensor. That's what an oxygen sensor, an O2 sensor looks like. All right, this is an automatic gearbox, so you can see it's slightly different to the one that was on the Transit itself. Again, we're dry here. We have a cover underneath this, okay, so we don't need to take the cover off to look at it to see if there's any moisture on it or anything like that. When we turn around here and look at these are again part of the suspension and the steering. These are called ball joints. We check them for play, okay, and then we check visually what that dust cover is like. Again, we check the brake pads from the inside, and on the front of the vehicle here, we check your brake lines. Again, make sure there's no cracks, make sure they're not broken. Check the spring, check the bushings in what's called the wishbone, and these here are your brake pad wear sensors and your ABS sensors, and again, we just make sure that they're all in good working order. So basic little checks in the car itself are the seat belts. Make sure they're in good working order, click them in place, make sure they're working. A particular thing to have a look at is your lap belt. In a lot of cases, you'll find that that's underneath the actual seat itself, and again, they will fail it. They won't stick their hands down between the seats in case there's a needle or whatever down, something sharp basically down the back of that seat. So make sure they're clearly visible. I would often just plug them in and leave them like that. If you have baby seats, I'd take them out of the car because they can fail them just for them not being fitted right. And I think the statistics are that 7 out of 10 baby seats are actually fitted correctly. The 3 out of 10, 30%, or maybe that's higher, are actually incorrectly fitted. So I would take it out, refit it afterwards, just let them see what they need to see for the test itself. Check your windows, make sure that they're opening and closing correctly, and we'll check door locks and things like that as well. So we'll just move to the front of this car now. Okay, again, we're in the front of the car. We want to check how the seat belts are working, make sure that they're doing that locking up. Okay, physically put it into the receiver, make sure that that's working. We want to check the handbrake while we're here and check the travel on that handbrake. 4 or 5 clicks, that's absolutely perfect. If it's up to around 8 to 10 clicks, they will fail it for handbrake travel. On the dash here, we're going to show next. And what I want to emphasize here is that the engine management light is turning on and then off. So I turn the engine management on, or the ignition on. I get the airbag light, it went off. Here's my engine management light. Okay, will that turn off or not? I need to actually physically start the engine. So we're going to start the engine and it should go off after a couple of seconds. And away it goes. So now I know that the engine management system in the car is physically working correctly. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go out and take a road test. But before I do that, I will usually check the tyre pressures on the car itself. 90% of the cars that come into us here have the incorrect tyre pressures. If the tyre pressure is too low, you're going to use excessive fuel. If the tyre pressure is too high, you're actually going to have less grip on the road. But the other thing I want to do when I take this test drive, and we'll do it now in a couple of seconds, is drive it and see if the vehicle is driving straight. So we've checked all the suspension's fine, tyre pressures are fine. Now let's see if it drives straight. Now we're doing the test drive of the vehicle itself. So we want to make sure that it's driving okay. We've made sure that there's no management lights or airbag lights or anything like that on it. We want to make sure it's driving straight. We physically let go of the steering wheel and see if the steering goes either to the left or to the right. Ideally, we want it to go very, very slightly left. The reason for that is that if you physically fall asleep at the wheel, you actually won't go into head-on traffic and basically cause an awful mess. So this vehicle, when we let go of it there just now, is traveling very, very slightly to the right. We need to adjust it. We need to adjust it within a certain specification, and then we need to test drive it again to make sure that it's okay. The CVRT or the NCT will then test it, and it has to be within their specifications again. So it's a very, very easy test to do, but the number one thing that it does for the car, other than make it safer, is it means that the tyres don't get worn adversely, so they won't get worn on the outside or the inside, so your tyres will actually last longer. So we've seen a couple of defects in this Transit here. I've rang the customer, he's given us the go-ahead to physically do the job and make sure that we fix what's needed for the test itself. So we're going to fix them, we're going to bring it to the test, and that'll be it. So I've shown you the basic job that we would do for a CVRT or an NCT. If you have any questions, just give us a call. Our number is 01835 2945, and we're located in the Ashbourne Industrial Estate for now. I'm going to bring you down to the new premises. We're going to have a look at that. It's a basic shell, and you'll see that then in a few weeks as that job progresses, as we start moving our gear in there over the next maybe 6 to 8 weeks. But in the meantime, recommend us to a friend. If you hear somebody in the pub or when you're out and about talking about they failed the NCT or they failed the CVRT or the old DOE, they want some help, they want a price on a job, just get them to give us a call. I told you earlier on that we were going to be moving to new premises, so we were around in the old premises, Unit 4A, Ashbourne Industrial Estate. Now you're at 27C, Ashbourne Business Centre. So I'm going to show you inside, so come on ahead. Knock knock, open wide. See what's on the other side. Trevor, are you right there, Bosco? So this is the new premises. As you can see, it's quite big, in or around the same size as the other premises. There's an entrance to the rear here, so we'll be delighted to know that. And we're going to kit this out. We're going to have our 4-poster ramp here. We're going to have 2 of our smaller ramps here angled so that there's ease of access. We're going to put a second washroom here for the guys. And when you come around this side here, this is going to be where our office space is going to be. So this is going to be modified. I'm going to have an office there. I'm going to have a reception that you come into here where you can sit down, you can have a cup of tea, you can read the paper, you can watch the telly or whatever you want to do. And in this space here, we're going to have a canteen. So there's a lot of luxuries going to be in this for the lads when they come to it. And over on this side here, we're going to have a parts department or stores for parts and things like that. Upstairs, we have a mezzanine. You can see it there. there's no real point in going up into it, but we're going to break that into probably about 4 offices, so there'll be office space there for people. Again, if you would like a small office to rent, you can contact me after the show. So lads, do you reckon you'll get a jacuzzi in here?